Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. I'm truly grateful for your support and companionship. Thanks to you, the channel has officially reached 10,000 subscribers. Without you, MHS would never have come this far. Since more and more new viewers are joining us, let me quickly remind you of the channel's format. MHS mainly uploads horror stories compilation, both real and fictional, with soothing rain sounds added at the end to help you relax and drift off to sleep. However, because most of you tend to fall asleep while watching, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could interact early on by liking, commenting, or sharing right at the start. This helps YouTube value our content more and spread it to a wider audience. Our current goal is to reach 300 likes within the first 24 hours of each video. And now, let's step into tonight's horror stories. There are moments in life when you realize that true evil doesn't have to be supernatural to be terrifying. I learned that on a late August night last year, while working the night shift at a Shell gas station in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm Carlos, 32 years old. I'm divorced and work the night shift to earn extra money to support my son. This job is usually quiet. Only a few long-haul truckers stop by and some drunk teenagers buy beer late at night. After my divorce, my life was already very subdued, and since I started working the night shift at this gas station, that quietness became even more profound. I even found myself reacting more slowly to every situation. That night, I was sitting behind the counter, looking at my phone. Outside, a light drizzle was falling, creating thin streaks of water on the window. The atmosphere was so quiet that I could hear the buzzing of the fluorescent lights above my head. Then the glass door burst open. A man walked in. He was big and had a disheveled and aggressive appearance. He walked straight to the counter and slammed a $50 bill down. The noise made me jump. He shouted just one word: "Gas!" I was startled and immediately stood up straight. He clenched his hands and stared at me for about 2 seconds. Without saying another word, he turned around and strode out. I put the money away, and a thought popped into my head: just another punk. Through the glass, I saw him go straight to pump number 4. His car was parked crookedly, not in the right spot. I stood up and walked to the window to watch. At first, I thought I would watch him struggle to open the gas cap or get the nozzle in, but what happened next made me freeze. He pulled the pump nozzle out, but instead of putting it in the gas tank, he opened the passenger side door. The lights from the gas station clearly illuminated his actions as he lifted the nozzle and began spraying gas directly into the car. I stood there, horrified. My mind was trying to process what my eyes were seeing. I rushed to the control panel and slammed the emergency shutoff button. A loud alarm blared, and gas pump number 4 immediately shut down. I took out my phone, and my hands were shaking as I dialed 911. I had just managed to give the dispatcher the address. The call was interrupted when I witnessed the next horrifying scene. A girl scrambled out of the passenger side door. Her body was drenched in gasoline, and she was in a state of extreme panic. She was screaming as she ran toward the highway, each step leaving gasoline trails on the ground. "I need police now. He's doused a girl in gasoline," I yelled into the phone. The next second, the man roared like a wild animal. I quickly threw my phone down and ran to the main door to watch. He threw the pump nozzle down and ran after the girl. Although he was big, he ran terrifyingly fast. In just a few seconds, he caught up to her. The scene in front of me will haunt me for the rest of my life. The man repeatedly kicked the girl brutally. The girl curled up on the ground, trying to shield herself with her small hands. Every kick made me shiver. I couldn't just stand there anymore. I was sure I was no match for that giant of a man. But I had to at least stall him until the police arrived. Otherwise, he would crush that girl. "Stop!" I ran out and yelled, but my voice was weak against his rage. He turned to look at me, his eyes red with hatred. "This bitch is cheating, she's playing me, and I'm gonna let her play with fire," he roared. My heart was pounding in my chest. The smell of gasoline was strong, and just a tiny spark would make this girl ignite instantly like a fireball. I talked to him, trying to reason with him. I tried to make my voice sound calm. "Hey man, calm down. We can talk about this." But he didn't even look at me. Just as he put his hand in his pocket, probably to find a lighter, police sirens blared. A few seconds later, 2 police officers jumped out of their patrol car, tasers ready in their hands. They yelled at the man to stop what he was doing. The man hesitated for a second. Then, like a cornered beast, he charged at the police. The sound of electricity buzzed. His body stiffened and he fell to the ground, convulsing for a few seconds before becoming still. I let out a gasp of relief, my entire body relaxing. Everything was okay now. An ambulance arrived a few minutes later. They quickly provided medical care to the girl. The police took my statement. They praised my courage before they left. But I didn't feel like a hero. The following nights, I worked in a state of extreme tension. Every time a customer walked in, I would watch every movement, every look. I talked to the store owner about installing more security cameras and keeping a baseball bat under the counter. After the incident, I realized that a person's rage can be truly terrifying if it's not stopped in time. Real monsters don't need fangs and claws. Sometimes it's just a normal person controlled by anger. It's been a few years, but I still can't forget what I saw on the security camera that morning. The image of the back door of the gas station slowly opening, but no one walking out. I'm Megan, 32 years old. I work the morning shift at an old gas station in a small town in Montana. It's pretty remote, with just a few gas pumps, a small convenience store, and a gravel parking lot in the back. I would arrive at 6 a.m. to take over for the night shift employee, a woman named Dora. The stillness of this place, especially before the sun was fully up, always made me feel a little uneasy. It was a morning in autumn. I arrived at the gas station about 10 minutes earlier than usual. When I walked into the convenience store, a middle-aged man was standing at the counter, his hands in his pockets, looking a little grumpy. The counter was empty. I guess this customer had been waiting for a while and was getting annoyed. "Dora?" I called out loudly, but there was no answer. I quickly apologized to the man and checked him out. After the man left, I looked around the store. The counter was as neat as usual. The cash register was locked, and the shelves were not disturbed. I went to the back stockroom and called out a few more times. I checked the bathroom, but there was no sign of Dora. On the break room table, I saw her phone. I wondered if she had an emergency and left without having time to let me know. I ran outside and looked at the parking lot. Dora's car was still parked near the back. A feeling of confusion started to rise in me. Dora always followed work procedures. No matter what, she would always inform me and the boss about the situation. I called my boss and briefly told him everything. My boss told me to check the security camera and call the police if necessary. I opened the computer at the counter and logged into the CCTV system. The station had 3 cameras, one at the counter, one at the gas pumps, and one in the back parking lot. My hands trembled a little as I rewound the footage from 4 a.m. when Dora was still at the counter. The video began with Dora standing behind the counter, occasionally glancing at the clock on the wall. She looked normal, maybe just a little tired from the long night shift. Then suddenly, she looked up, her eyes directed toward the back door, as if she had just heard something. After a few seconds of listening, Dora quickly stepped away from the counter and went straight toward the back door. I immediately switched to the parking lot camera, not understanding why I felt so tense. The screen showed the door slowly opening, the hinges creaking softly, but there was no Dora, no one there at all. I rewound it in slow motion, my eyes glued to the screen, watching every second. The door opened, the air seemed to stand still, then the door closed. I still didn't see her. "No way! What is this?" I mumbled to myself. I checked the time again, making sure the 2 cameras were perfectly synchronized. The camera wasn't broken. Everything else on the screen looked completely normal. Dora's car, the trash can behind the store. But Dora seemed to have vanished into the darkness. A feeling of fear washed over me, making my hands and feet go cold. I tried to find a logical explanation. Maybe she had stayed close to the wall, avoiding the camera's angle, and then ran straight into the pine forest behind. But why would she do that? Did someone call her out? Or was someone waiting, threatening her? These thoughts made me shiver and look around the store. Suddenly I felt scared of this familiar place. I called the police. While waiting, I went out to the parking lot and stood right at the back door, observing everything. The ground was covered with gravel and dry leaves. The dense pine forest was about 50 yards away. I imagined Dora running in there. But for what reason? Where did she go? The police arrived. They thoroughly checked the store, the parking lot, and rewatched the video. An officer took careful notes and asked me about Dora. I told him what I knew. Dora was 28, lived alone in a small apartment near downtown Livingston, and had been working the night shift for 2 years. The officer asked if Dora had any enemies, or if there was anyone suspicious in the area. I was stunned for a few seconds. I said I didn't know. Dora and I weren't close enough to know too much about each other. The police checked Dora's car. The door was unlocked, and the keys were still in the ignition. A cup of cold coffee was on the passenger seat, next to a neatly folded sweater. There were no signs of a struggle or an attack. The police called a search team, but the forest was too vast, and the autumn wind had caused a thick layer of fallen leaves, covering any possible traces. Dora's apartment was also searched, but there was nothing unusual. No clues were found. In the following weeks, the story of Dora's disappearance spread throughout the town. The local newspaper published a short article asking for information from the public. A few people said they had seen Dora, but the information they provided was not helpful. 3 years have passed, and Dora is still missing without a trace. I still work at the gas station, but every time I open the back door to take out the trash, I always feel a strange cold draft. I don't believe in ghosts or the supernatural, but I can't understand how Dora disappeared. Was she afraid of something in the forest? Or was someone really waiting in the darkness where the camera couldn't record? I always want to believe that Dora simply quit her job and is living peacefully somewhere far away. But then, every time the back door creaks open in the wind, I find myself involuntarily turning my head, half hoping, half afraid, that Dora will walk in. It all started when I was 17. That's when I got my first job working the night shift at a gas station. My parents weren't thrilled about me working late, but I was determined to help them with part of my college tuition. The gas station where I worked was lonely, like an island in the endless cornfields of Ohio. At night, the dim light only lit up a small corner, and the rest was shrouded in darkness. The thing I feared most was also the last task before the end of my shift: taking out the trash. The big dumpster was in the back corner of the parking lot, where the light didn't reach. Every time I walked out there, I would imagine someone was hiding among the trash bags or in the darkness, ready to grab me. I tried to convince myself to let go of those crazy thoughts, but I couldn't. Every time I went to take out the trash, I would perform a small ritual of my own. I'd turn on my flashlight, look around carefully, and then run quickly to the dumpster, throw the bag in, and immediately go back inside. I still remember that shift. There were only 3 customers all night. At 2 a.m., I locked the cash register and turned off the lights in the store, leaving only the lights in the gas pump area on. I picked up the trash bag and walked out the back door as usual. The parking lot was empty, with only 2 trucks parked in the far corner. I was walking toward the dumpster when I suddenly heard a voice. "Hey, you!" The whisper was raspy, like someone was trying to hold their breath. I froze, my heart pounding. The trash bag fell from my hand. I turned around and looked, my eyes trying to find the source of the sound. But there was nothing but darkness. Maybe it was the wind blowing through a truck window, or maybe it was the radio from a cab. I tried to reassure myself. I bent down to pick up the trash bag, intending to continue, when I heard it again. "Excuse me, could you help me?" For a brief moment, I almost believed that someone was in trouble, but something felt wrong. Why would they whisper if they really needed help? Why wouldn't they step into the light or come into the store? With that thought, I dropped the trash bag, turned, and ran toward the back door. Just as I was about to touch the doorknob, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a tall, dark figure approaching. Luckily, I made it inside the store, slammed the door shut, and with trembling hands, I turned the lock and engaged the deadbolt. I ran to the front of the store, turned on the lights to check the front door lock, and then called my dad. "Dad, I need you to come pick me up. There's someone suspicious around the parking lot." My dad didn't ask any more questions. About 15 minutes later, the headlights of his car shone into the store. I ran out and jumped into the car without looking back. On the way home, I told my dad about the whispering voice. He just listened without saying anything. The next morning, the gas station manager called me. The manager's voice sounded pretty exhausted. The manager told me that I didn't have to come to work that day and said that after I had left, 3 men had broken the lock on the front door to get into the store. They searched the place, took all the money from the cash register, and cleared the shelves of all the cigarette packs. They even took cans of beer and chewing gum. The security camera recorded one of them constantly looking toward the back door, where I usually took out the trash. After hearing the phone call from the manager, I was in a daze. I'd been so close to a monster, but I had luckily escaped in the nick of time. The police came to see me that afternoon. They said this wasn't the first case. This group of criminals had attacked 2 other gas stations in the past month. What was special about the previous cases was that they took the night shift employees hostage and beat them to get the cash register passwords. There were no casualties, but the victims were all seriously injured. When I heard that, I broke down in tears. I was truly lucky to be here, in one piece, to tell the police everything. I quit my night job after that. My parents were very happy with that decision. In the years since, every time I think back to that terrifying night, I still get shivers thinking about how I had a close call with death. The vigilance and fear that I once thought were crazy had actually saved my life.
I'm Maria, third-year student major in accounting from the University of Brigham Young. I have a boyfriend named Jonathan. He's 5 years my senior, having a steady and stable job and income. We had been together for 2 years now, and Johnny had always been the one caring for me. But there's always rainy days. There will be discord between us. This was unavoidable for every relationship. For our 2-year anniversary, because Johnny's schedule was pretty busy, we decided to have a movie night out, since it'd give us breathing room. Of course, every movie theater always had special discount programs for couples' anniversaries. We obviously were going to pick the double seats so we could see the movies best. We're going to watch a romantic drama one. I had been waiting a long time for this, so I prepped up the prettiest I could, even utilizing the perfume Johnny's gave me for the evening. It'd been 20 minutes already and still no sign of Jonathan. Not a single one, including texts, calls, or any messages. It's really annoying when I tried to call him many times, but he didn't pick up. At this point, I was no longer feeling annoyed. It was a subtle sense of dread that took over. I had tried to continuously call Johnny, and thankfully, he picked up at the 10-ish call. The moment I was able to hear his voice, I felt like a heavy burden was lifted from my chest. Jonathan said to me in a soft and rather somber tone, "I'm really sorry, Maria." He must deal with an urgent last minute with his business partners and hence couldn't notify for me in time. If you had been in my shoes, girls, I'm pretty sure you'd do what I did. I had prepared everything for this occasion, and now all I received was utter disappointment. Both of us had a huge fight, and I ended up hanging up before Johnny's even finished. In that very moment, I decided to see the movie by myself. With or without him, this beauty couldn't be wasted. I immediately went on my way to the movies. The taxi took me there at 9:45, which was on time. since my movie would start at 10 o'clock. Pulling out the couple tickets, I once again felt the fury rose within me. So I did the logical, tossing one to the trash in anger. After purchasing the popcorn and accompanying drinks, I went to the theater. The ticket man gazed at me with sharp, cold eyes. "Room number 4, go ahead, then right." His action was very odd, yet I paid little attention to it. In the movie room, the atmosphere was very cold, to the point that it made me shudder uncomfortably. This pretty dress now, here in this environment, was now completely worthless. Searching for my seat once again really hit me hard. Why didn't I just buy out another ticket? Why must I cling on to the old ticket? Because every other seat there were couples, happily seeing the movie, while I'm out here all alone. This movie night had started out fucking great, and now it tried to screw me further, huh? At that moment, I began to notice the silence around the film room. Everyone was in utter silence, including the couple next to me. Even the advertisement music was kinda creepy, to the point it made it shudder thinking about it. What's going on? I thought today it was a romantic drama. I took a selfie, the best that I could, to show that I was in pretty high spirit. Then I put the picture in my personal page, well, for a reason you might already guess it. I just want to show Jonathan that even without him, I'm still fine. Reading the comments complimenting my beauty, I was in ecstasy. With the movie on the way, it's time for me to shut down on my phone to see it. After some time, my phone suddenly was bombarded with notifications. The first few, I decided to ignore it. But after a few dozen of constant bombardment, prompting the others surrounding me throwing me angry looks, that I decided to shut it down for good. And yet, all of those notifications came from Jonathan himself. Okay, let's see what the hell he wanted, I thought to myself. He was in a very interrogative mood to me today, constantly asking me on who I am seeing the movie with. That's odd, but I replied back to him that I was seeing the movie alone. Johnny immediately sent me the picture I just took. Looking closely behind it, there was obviously a man who I didn't know, turning his face away. The action I took would feel like I was leaning my head onto his shoulder. But I swore to God, behind me at that time, there was absolutely nobody. I swiftly turned my back, only to see nobody there, just two women who's sitting there on their own. But I noticed that there was a half-consumed popcorn and drinks. It seemed to be someone there, and that person had left. There was a very familiar scent in the air. It seemed to be perfume, yet I couldn't recall what familiar about this. Once again, the phone rang again. It was still Jonathan, angrily demanding to know where I was, interrogatively. I tried to explain everything, but he didn't seem to buy it. Fine, then go away with your mistrust, you jerk, I thought, turning my phone off to go back to the movies, which I had missed a few minutes and now didn't know where it was going. How annoying. Suddenly, I could now hear the sounds behind me, as if someone's sitting right on it. Should I turn around to see who was, and was that the man in the picture? I felt kind of rude doing so, yet I also felt curious and an urge to confirm everything. While there was a battle inside my head, I could feel the heavy breathing on the back of my head. The breathing came closer and closer, to the point it was right there on my ear, and I could smell the familiar perfume more clearly than ever. So I tried to conceal myself with a half gaze on the corner of my eyes, disguised by me combing my hair. It was again the empty seat. The popcorn and soft drinks remained where it was earlier. Okay, this is odd, I thought to myself, completely lost all concentration to the movie at hand. The constant ringing from Jonathan I left vacant too. It was until I saw the smirking from the two women behind me that it snapped me back to reality. In the dimly lit environment, they stared at me and smirked creepily. The music didn't aid in the environment at all. The rumbling drums seemed to jerk my heart off my chest. Returning to my seat, I couldn't think anything clearly. All I could feel was my heart beating heavily in my chest. Sensing the gaze from the couple next to me, I slowly glanced toward them. What greeted me knocked me off completely. It wasn't the surprised curiosity I was expecting. Same as the two women earlier, they stared at me with their creepy smiles. I frantically threw my eyes to the big screen, completely lost my nerve. The scene showing two characters lovingly looking at one another, and then suddenly, the man lifted up a creepy smile, to the horror of the woman. Just like me, right now, if I could see myself in the mirror. The man swiftly turned into a creepy demon and jumped toward the woman, with blood flying everywhere. I yelped helplessly, stood up frantically, looking for a way out. This isn't real. I need to get out of here. I darted to the exit with all my strength, and now the beautiful dress was killing me there. It was overly long and tight and restricted every move that I made. The exit door had been closed shut, and all my attempts at pulling or pushing were for naught. All I could do was frustratingly slapping on the door and cry. Never in my life that I felt that helpless and terror. Leaning my back at the door, I looked at my back. Everyone had disappeared, and the movie room was completely empty. What's going on here? Did I stumble into another world? The movie room suddenly flashed up its light with a lot of balloons and pink. The screen now showed the pictures I took together with Johnny a few days ago. Wait, what? What's going on? Jonathan came from the other side, hands holding a rose bundle and a smirk at my miserable state. The people in the room earlier were now his entourage. They all clapped their hands, congratulated us being together. So it's you behind me, isn't it? That's correct, ma'am. And I thought I was busted when you smelled the cologne. How scatterbrained I was. This cologne was my birthday gift to him 3 months earlier. How could I forget that? And for that forgetfulness, would you like to be chained with me for life, Maria? And that went his uniquely creepy way of proposal. To be honest, I was torn between extremes of emotion at that point, yet I accepted. Our wedding would come soon, later this year. However, his proposal left me permanently in fear of darkness. And I'm not sure if I could go to the cinema the way I used to do it anymore. My name is Rick. I'm 29 years old. 2 years ago, I worked at a movie theater in this charming little town called Galena, Illinois. I had been there for 3 years, and I was getting ready to move to New York in a few months. One night while I was working at the theater, I met Maya, the pretty girl with the long flowing dress and big brown eyes. She looked a bit shy and was awkwardly glancing around the theater hallway. I went up to her to see if she needed help and found out it was Maya's first time at the movies. After I showed Maya to the theater, I stood outside for about 2.5 hours. As soon as the theater doors opened, I looked for Maya because I wanted to get to know her better. Maya gave me a really sweet smile, so it seemed like she wanted to get to know me too. Do you want to go to the cafe nearby? Sure, I'm all for it. As I replied to Maya, I pulled out my phone and quickly texted my coworker to cover my shift. I shared a bunch of funny stories about the cinema with Maya. She laughed a lot, and her smile was so charming, it kind of took my breath away. I noticed that Maya was pretty quiet. She mostly just listened and observed. At 10 p.m., Maya quickly said goodbye and took off. I grabbed her hand and gave Maya a movie to take with her. I hope you come to the cinema more often. I hope we will meet again. My face turned red after saying that. Maya looked at me, smiled, and then left without saying anything. A week later, Maya still hadn't come to the cinema. I kicked myself for not asking for her contact info. Maya's image kept popping into my head. I think I fell for her the moment we first met. One morning, when I showed up at the cinema to start work, Maya was standing there. Her face looked pale and tired, with red, swollen eyes. It seemed like she'd been crying a lot. Still wearing the same dress from that day, Maya was holding the tape I gave her with both hands. I ran over, and before I could even ask, Maya hugged me and started crying. After Maya calmed down, she told me about what was going on with her family. Maya was the only child in the family. They had a small farm, and Maya took care of everything on her own. Her mom was really controlling, and her dad was seriously ill and couldn't walk. That night, after finishing work outside, I didn't go home. I went straight to the cinema. And my mom found out. She was really mad and locked me in. Maya had a few purple marks on her wrists. I asked her about them, but she quickly pulled her hand away, looking pretty panicked. Maya asked me to hang out with her because she didn't want to be alone at the moment. I took a day off right away, ran to the nearest clothing store, and got Maya a new outfit. That beautiful smile came back, and we strolled around the street together like a happy couple. Out of nowhere, two tall, intimidating guys came walking toward us. "Got a new boyfriend, Gina?" The tattooed guy glanced at Maya and gave her a smile. "Last night was awesome, wasn't it?" The two guys exchanged looks and laughed. Maya was really confused. She grabbed my hand and pulled me away. Once we'd put some distance, Maya looked at me and quickly explained that they had the wrong person. She had never hung out with people like that. I believed Maya. Her confusion was kind of endearing. I took Maya home, and she ended up sharing a lot with me. Maya dreams of becoming a professional dancer and wants to leave the farm and this town to make the dream a reality. I asked her to come with me to New York so we could start a new life and she could chase her dream. Maya smiled, and we had sex on her lead. The next morning, I offered to give Maya a ride home. It took about 30 minutes to drive from my place to Maya's house. It's a small house in the middle of a farm. The inside of the house was pretty messy. Noticing my surprise, Maya said it might be because of the two dogs her family had. Maya suddenly grabbed my hand and said, "I have something to show you. Come to my room." The hallway was pretty dark, and as we walked past the room, a nasty smell hit us. Maya said the mess was also from the two dogs, and that her mom definitely hadn't cleaned up carefully. Maya quickly pulled me toward the room at the end of the hallway. This was Maya's room, and it had a pretty simple and old setup. At that moment, Maya seemed like a different person. There was a weird smile. Her eyes showed she was bracing for trouble, and she kept pacing back and forth. Maya suddenly pounced on me, leaving me confused. Then I heard a small but noticeable scream. "Gina!" Before I could even react, Maya went back to being her usual self. She grabbed my hand and said she wanted to take me to the farm to introduce me to the little friends she was taking care of. I asked about the scream I just heard, but Maya just kept pulling me along and vaguely said there was no scream. Maya's family farm had animals like chickens, crows, and pigs, but there weren't very many of them. "Where are your two dogs? What are their names?" "I don't have dogs." Maya's answer made both of us freeze. Maya avoided my look and walked away. I ran after her, feeling anxious and confused, and bombarded Maya with questions. I ran after her, and suddenly she grabbed the shovel, glared at me, and charged over. I tried to run, but Maya managed to hit me hard on the right hand. The pain was sharp, and I heard a cracking sound. I was pretty sure my shoulder blade was broken. I fell down, then another shovel hit me, while Maya's eerie laughter echoed around. I kicked her leg, and Maya fell down. Seizing the chance, I used my legs to pin her down. I only had my left hand free, so I fumbled with my phone in my pocket, pressing the call button to dial the police. Maya got up, grabbed my phone, and threw it away. My headache was making me dizzy, so at that point, all I could do was run. The animals on the farm got scared and started running in all directions. At one point, I almost ran right into a bull. I fell down, and at that moment, Maya's image looked like a tiger contentedly enjoying a meal after a long hunt. She was about to get revenge on me with a fatal blow, but thankfully, the police arrived just in time. Maya was restrained by 2 male police officers, while I was treated by 2 paramedics. I told the police about the smell and the screams. After searching the house, they found a man in a wheelchair, gasping for breath. He was Maya's dad, and she had been starving him for days. The smell was because he couldn't use the bathroom on his own. The screams were coming from a woman who was in pretty bad shape. It was Maya's mom, who had been locked in the basement since the night of the argument. Maya's real name was Gina. She was 35 and had a complicated history with the town's troublemakers. The flood of information left me feeling completely overwhelmed and in shock. Maya was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Part of the reason was her strict and controlling mom. Her harsh control made Gina constantly crave a way to push back. Gina was taken to a mental health facility for treatment. Her parents were also lucky to be rescued and were moved to a nursing home. I quit my job and left Galena as soon as I got out of the hospital. I learned a big lesson about love and trust. It's something you really need to understand before giving it to someone.
My wife Carrie and I have a little house in a quiet suburb with lots of trees around that make it feel kind of gloomy and cut off. That night was super quiet. The only thing you could hear was the chirping of insects, way off in the distance. I looked outside by the window. The weak moonlight shined through the leaves and lit up the dim shadows on the ground. That messed up dream about the company's problems woke me up, sweat dripping down my forehead. I felt so heavy, like there was some invisible weight pushing down on my shoulders. I headed down to the living room, walking lightly, but my steps still echoed in the empty house. When I opened the fridge to grab a beer, I felt this chill in the hallway. Not just from the air, but from this weird, uneasy vibe. I sat down on the couch and turned on the dim reading light. The pale yellow glow hit the wall, making these wavy shadows that looked like they were dancing. I tried to focus on the page, but my mind kept wandering back to the stuff going on with the company. Suddenly, all the lights went out, and the house was totally dark. The sound of leaves rustling in the wind startled me, and my heart started pounding. A cold breeze brushed the back of my neck, and it felt like the house suddenly wasn't familiar anymore. I tried to figure out what happened, and just focused on staying calm. Power outages weren't rare where we lived, but this time, something felt off and made me uneasy. I decided to step outside and see what was going on around me. The cold night wind hit my skin, making me shiver. I noticed the neighbor's house across the street was still lit up, so it was clear that only my house had an electrical issue. But when I turned around to go back in, the front door was locked. I tried turning the doorknob, but no luck. I walked around the house, and that uneasy feeling just kept getting worse. I looked through the window next to me and freaked out when I saw 2 figures moving inside the house. The chubby figure was bent over, checking the drawer, while the tall, skinny one was going through the bookshelf.
I caught a glimpse of something shiny in one of the thieves' hands. A gun. My heart stopped for a second, then started pounding so hard I thought it was gonna burst. I quickly came up with a plan to run over to the neighbor's house and ask them to call the police. But then I remembered my wife was still inside. My whole body went stiff, and a cold shiver ran down my spine, making it feel like I was frozen in place. Worried thoughts were swirling in my head, all jumbled and unfocused. Then I thought about my wife and just wanted to rush in to protect her. But the fear of getting caught and facing the gun kept me from moving. I turned around and ran straight to the bedroom window. I knocked on the glass for the third time, and my wife woke up, looking all sleepy, then got panicked and surprised when she saw me outside the window. My voice was urgent, and there was fear and determination in every word, as I told her to hide in the closet and stay totally quiet. My wife nodded and quickly did what I said without saying a word. With not much time left, I rushed over to the neighbor's house, knocked on the door, and told them everything, my voice shaking with panic. The neighbor called the police right away, and just a minute later, the police sirens went off, breaking the silence of the night. By the time the police showed up, the house had been trashed. All the valuable stuff was gone, and there were just broken pieces and chaos everywhere. They found my wife in the closet, freaking out. Her eyes were blank, and she couldn't say a word. I hugged her tight, trying to calm her down, but inside, my heart was heavy with pain and helplessness. Once my wife calmed down, she told me, her voice shaking, that she had heard the thieves' footsteps coming into the room. They were planning to kidnap someone in the house and ask for ransom, joking about coming back to see how the family would react once the person was gone. One of them even said they'd been watching our house for a while, knew all our routines, and that today was the perfect time to make their move. One of their voices sounded familiar, like someone we'd met before. One of them mentioned the name Mark when talking about the plan, and my wife couldn't help but think of Mark, my old coworker, who had been to the house a few times. Every word my wife said felt like a knife to the heart. I could still feel the fear and unease hanging around in every dark corner of my mind. I felt like the moment the house went dark, everything changed. It wasn't just a robbery. It was an attack on the sense of security that used to be there in the quiet darkness. Nothing felt the same anymore, and that invisible fear still stuck with us.
I'm Sophia, 33 years old. My husband is Liam, 34 years old. My husband and I live in New York. We've been married for 4 years but have not planned to have children. I'm a successful woman with a high-paying job. Lately, I've been so busy with work that my husband and I haven't had much time to spend together. I felt Liam's coldness. On a 5-day business trip to California, I told Liam to arrange work to go with me. Both a business trip and a trip for the couple to warm up their relationship. But Liam seemed very hesitant about that suggestion, and I had to try to convince him. We rented a room at a luxury hotel near Coronado Beach. During the day, I will go handle work, leaving Liam at the hotel to explore everything around. Only at night do we have time for each other. Creepy things at this hotel begin to happen. The first night, I was startled awake when I heard the sound of water running in the toilet. It was about 12 o'clock. I think the hotel's water system has a problem. The sound of running water stopped for about 2 minutes. I was also quite tired after a day of work, so I went back to sleep right after. But on the second night, I heard a knocking sound coming from the closet door. At that time, I couldn't sleep because I was reviewing documents to send to my partner. That knocking sound followed by the rhythm of 3 consecutive sounds with the pause between each time. My heart beat faster with each knock. I'm a very shy person, so I didn't dare go up to see what was inside the cabinet. Hurriedly jumping onto the bed, I tried to shake Liam vigorously. But my husband sleeps very soundly. No matter what, he doesn't wake up. The knocking stopped. I was scared and covered myself with the blanket, hugged Liam tightly, and tried to close my eyes to sleep. Things haven't stopped yet. On the third night, I woke up in the middle of the night. Turning to the side, I couldn't see Liam anywhere. I called Liam, no response. I ran to the bathroom and couldn't find him. I was scared and turned on all the lights in the room. I picked up the phone and called Liam many times, but the phone said it couldn't be reached. The clock showed it was after 2 a.m. Checking that Liam's room card and shoes were still there, I panicked. I didn't dare sleep alone in the room anymore. I quickly ran down to the reception hall to sit. Unable to sleep all night, I went up to my room feeling tired and exhausted at 7 a.m. When I entered the room, I was startled to see Liam sleeping soundly on the bed. I called Liam up and asked him where he went last night and when he returned to his room. Liam looked at me blankly. "I slept in the room all night last night. What's wrong with you?" I fell into a state of shock. What the hell is going on? Could it be that I'm being blinded by a ghost? I shuddered at that thought. That day I took a break because my mind was too stressed and I couldn't stay awake. Liam wanted to go out for a walk on the beach for a while and told me to rest. I lay in bed listening to relaxing music. After a while, the knocking sound came again. I jumped up in surprise and stared towards the wardrobe. Slowly getting out of bed, I gently walked to the wardrobe. It was around 10 a.m. I was no longer afraid, but instead felt angry. I wanted to see what the hell was haunting me these past few nights. I opened the closet door really hard, but inside were just 2 bathrobes and nothing else. I was bewildered, not understanding what was going on when the knocking sounded again. It comes from the left corner of the cabinet. I reached out and gently pushed the corner of the cabinet. The wooden panel opened up to another quite large space. I was startled and screamed loudly when I saw someone, and the people inside were also startled and screamed loudly when they saw me. After calming down, I asked that person to step out. It was a young girl with a hot body and a very thin nightgown. She tried to run away but was immediately controlled by me. I called and told Liam to go to his room immediately. I tried to stay as calm as possible when listening to the explanations from my bad husband. The other girl has been his lover for nearly 3 months, traveling with his wife, but he insisted on taking her with him. The sound of running water that first night was because she couldn't hold it in anymore and decided to use the bathroom. The rhythmic tapping sound coming from the closet is their sign when calling each other. The night Liam disappeared was to crawl into the closet to sleep with his lover. Returning home, I immediately filed for divorce. The lawsuit and evidence of adultery, asking Liam for a large amount of compensation, making him miserable. I have to thank the hotel with its unique design for helping me recognize Liam's deceitful face.
I'm Erica, 26 years old, living alone in Mississippi. I don't have many relatives. I've been living with my grandparents in Florida since I was young. I don't know who my father is. As for my mother, according to my grandparents, she was swept away and disappeared in a flood when I was 4 years old. After graduating from college, I moved to Mississippi to live and work. Mississippi is one of those states in the Gulf Coast region, heavily affected by hurricanes, floods, and tornadoes. Every year, the government evacuates us to safer areas during disasters. The people here are accustomed to and quite experienced with this. Nevertheless, like everyone else living here, I love the land of Mississippi. 5 years ago, also during a relocation due to a natural disaster, the horrifying story happened, and now looking back, I still feel chills running down my spine. In February 2019, a serious flood occurred in the southern and central regions of Mississippi. There was a significant amount of rainfall, causing millions of dollars in damage. and displacing over 15,000 people. My neighbors and I were among them. We were moved to an elementary school where there should be enough sleeping space for the overwhelming number of people. Upon arriving at the temporary shelter area, I called my grandparents to reassure them. We were informed that we would be here for about a week to ensure the flood would subside completely. We were no strangers to relocations like this anymore. People adapted quite easily and quickly. Each person would be provided with personal items, necessary food, and a sleeping bag. The sleeping bag was the horrifying nightmare for me after that relocation. Until now, I'm afraid of all the big zipper locking bags. After dinner and personal hygiene, we went to the classrooms to rest. I remember each classroom could accommodate a maximum of 20 people. I found a suitable spot for myself and lay down. I usually read before going to sleep. Luckily, I managed to bring the book I was reading before the relocation. Lying down reading for a while, I noticed a strange woman in the room. She was quite small, with disheveled clothes and a panicked look on her face. She kept pacing around the room, mumbling incessantly, clutching the sleeping bag tightly. I didn't pay much attention to her, continuing to read my book. After a while, when everyone had fallen asleep, I looked at my phone. It was almost midnight. I also marked my page and prepared to go to sleep. Just as I closed my eyes, I heard murmurs from someone. Despite trying to ignore it, it was very clear and close to me. I pulled the sleeping bag down and turned around. My heart seemed to stop for a few seconds. Right in front of me was the face of that woman. She had wide open eyes, staring at me and sporting a sinister smile. Her breath smelled terribly, like a corpse. Reflexively, I sat up, yelled loudly while moving back. Some people who hadn't fallen asleep heard my loud scream and immediately got up to check the situation. The room lights were turned on, and the neighbor asked me what had happened. Terrified, I pointed towards the woman, saying she was very creepy and smelled awful. But looking back, lying asleep in the sleeping bag was an old lady. I stared at her in amazement. While everyone threw me their annoying glances, everyone returned to their place, turned off the lights, and went to sleep. I moved to another corner of the room, pulled the sleeping bag high, leaving only a small hole for air to enter. My heart still hadn't returned to normal beats. After a while, still unable to sleep, I gently pulled the sleeping bag down and looked outside. The woman was lying there, looking at me, but her head was completely turned upside down compared to her body. I tightly shut my mouth, trying not to make any loud noises. I pulled the zipper off the sleeping bag to cover my body completely, trying to regulate my breathing. I closed my eyes, put on my headphones, and fell asleep without knowing when. The next morning when I woke up, the first thing I did was look around the room. The woman had disappeared. About 4 days later, everything went on as usual. I never met that woman again. People in the shelter didn't care or remember anything about her. We were all happy when the government announced that the flood had completely receded. After today, we can safely return home and resume our normal lives. That night, I don't remember how long I slept. A foul smell hit my nose, causing me to wake up in a daze. That terrible smell made me wake up immediately. I sat up, looked around. Everyone was still sleeping. Turning to the left, I saw someone lying next to me, the sleeping bag covering the entire body. My neighbor Maria was lying on the right. I shook her awake. I asked her if she smelled anything unpleasant. Maria sniffed, looked around, then said she didn't smell anything and went back to sleep. But the smell of decay was very clear. Why didn't anyone else smell it? The next morning I woke up. That foul smell was still there. It made me extremely dizzy and nauseous. Everyone was quickly packing up to go home. The person in the sleeping bag next to me still hadn't woken up. I was surprised, reached out to wake that person up. As soon as I touched the sleeping bag, a loud noise rang out, making me startle. I called out loudly a few more times, but the person inside the sleeping bag still didn't respond. I trembled, reached out to pull the zipper of the bag down. Inside the sleeping bag was a rotting corpse. I immediately screamed loudly and jumped out of control. People around came to help me calm down. I was crying and trembling, trying to tell them about the terrifying thing inside the sleeping bag. Once again, the incomprehensible looks were staring at me. A man came over, picked up the sleeping bag. A few snacks and a bottle fell out from inside. He looked at me uncomfortably, saying it was his sleeping bag and I should stop making such a fuss. I was panicked. Finally, what was going on? Why was I the only one seeing those terrifying things? On the way home, I heard the radio on the bus recounting the case of a woman. Her name was Louisa. 22 years ago, when she was 27 years old, she was a single mother who was swept away by the flood while going to pick up her 4-year-old daughter from school. Louisa's body was never found. I was stunned. My whole body was freezing cold. I remembered the horrific image of that woman. She had eyes very similar to my mother's.
So, this story I'm about to tell you, I've never forgotten it, even after all these years. I'm Erica, and this scary thing happened to me when I was 10. I was super scared of dogs. Not the cute, fluffy ones you see on Instagram, more like pit bulls, labs, goldens, and dogs like that. They were huge and probably weighed like twice as much as me back then. I was just this skinny little girl. Their eyes were so intense it felt like they could see right through you. My fear wasn't something you could just laugh off. It was deep, paralyzing, so terrifying that it made my skin crawl and my body freeze up. Every time I saw a big dog, my breath would catch and my vision would go blurry. I just stood there, my knees shaking, praying it wouldn't come any closer. That night, I was supposed to have dinner at my best friend Kelly's place. I was planning to stay after dinner for a bit, like until 7 or 8. But Kelly and I were having so much fun, just caught up in cartoons and board games, that by the time I left, it was totally dark outside. The temperature had dropped a lot, and a cold wind was blowing through the quiet suburban street, making my skin crawl. Kelly's house was just one street over from mine, and there was a shortcut. It was this narrow alley with tall walls on both sides and wild bushes growing along the way. I'd walked this way 100 times before, but tonight, it just felt different. The darkness felt like it went on forever, swallowing up the warm light from the street lamps. I walked fast, my heart pounding, trying to ignore the fear creeping up in my chest. I should have listened to that feeling, should have turned back, should have taken the long way home under the familiar yellow light, but I didn't. I just kept walking, sinking deeper into the fear, telling myself I was probably just overthinking it. When I got to the middle of the alley, I heard footsteps behind me, heavy and steady. The guy in front of me was tall, really tall, like a shadow in the dark alley. The weak streetlight only lit up part of his face, but enough for me to see his pale, lifeless skin. He was wearing a black coat, all worn out, covering his body, with just his hands showing. His fingers were long and thin, like dry branches. His face was mostly covered by a hat, but I could still see his mouth. He was smiling, like a creepy grin, almost as if he was enjoying my fear. My stomach dropped, and I remember feeling like my legs were stuck to the ground, with every part of me screaming to run. In front of me was this tall figure, barely lit, getting closer with each step, and the sound was echoing off the walls of the narrow alley. Panic hit me. I tried to scream, but my throat was tight, and no sound would come out. I couldn't move. My whole body was shaking as the guy got closer, and his hand just barely touched my shoulder. I can still remember how cold his fingers felt, and how my skin just prickled with pure fear. "It's dangerous to be out here alone at night, little girl. You'll run into pervs, kidnappers, like me." He laughed, loud and creepy. My legs went weak, and I just started crying, my heart hurting so bad. I felt like I was facing a monster, not a person. My whole body was shaking. My limbs felt numb, but I couldn't look away from him. The creep grabbed both my hands and yanked me closer to him. Before I could even react, he leaned in close to my ear, gritted his teeth, and told me if I still wanted to go home, I couldn't make a sound. A 10-year-old girl back then could only bite her lips and nod, trying to be quiet. Then I heard a loud roar, like it came from deep inside. I looked around to see where the sound came from, and there they were. 2 big dogs right at the entrance of the alley. They were feral dogs, fur all messy, ribs showing under their skin. I was facing 2 horrors at once, and it felt like my mind and heart were going to explode from all the pressure. The dogs' eyes were locked on me and the guy, their lips pulled back, showing off sharp, shiny teeth. Did they think their territory was being invaded or something? They moved fast, and before I knew it, they were on the guy. He screamed, this high-pitched, freaked-out scream, and started backing away, trying to shove them off. The dogs wouldn't back off, biting and growling, and their growls just got scarier in the alley. I saw my chance. My body finally moved, and I took off running. I ran faster than I ever had, not stopping until I got to my front door. My hands were shaking so bad, it took me 3 tries to turn the doorknob. The rest was just a blur, the rushed voices of my parents, the police, the ambulance. I remember sitting in the hospital, a blanket around my shoulders, still too stunned to talk. My parents told me the dogs chased the guy off, and they probably saved my life. The creep was badly hurt, with deep bites, some of them in pretty bad spots. He was getting treated and would have to go to court, facing the right sentence once he healed up. According to my parents, they'd been feeding the dogs for the past few months. So those dogs protected me, not because they were feral or dangerous, but because they were grateful, smart, and brave. That night changed everything for me. Even though I was still scared, I couldn't deny that deep down I felt thankful and loved them. My quiet little heroes who showed up just in time to save me.
I am Evelyn, 32 years old. A light drizzle was falling on the quiet streets of Portland, streaking water down the car windows. I pulled up my coat collar and hurried toward the office building. April was colder than usual this year, and the gloomy sky made it feel like something was off. The office was buzzing with laughter this morning. Everyone was pulling pranks on each other. Someone had stuck a note on my computer screen. Password changed. Good luck. I didn't even react. April Fools had never really been my thing. A big yellow envelope showed up on my desk, no name on it, but it definitely caught my attention. I opened it. Inside was a plain white sheet of paper with just one sentence. The game has just begun. I glanced around the office, confused. No one even looked my way, like they were all waiting for me to do something. I brushed it off, figuring it was just someone's dumb prank. That night, when I got home, there was a small black gift box sitting right by my door with a crimson ribbon. I picked it up, and a shiver ran down my spine. When I opened it, there was another piece of paper inside. Happy April Fools. I shivered again, and as soon as I folded the paper, I noticed a small photo at the bottom of the box. It was a picture of me from that morning, right after I stepped out of the coffee shop near my office. It was taken from a distance, but it was pretty clear someone had been following me. I carried this weird mix of confusion and discomfort, thinking the whole thing was just some creepy April Fool's joke. That night, a soft scratching sound outside my bedroom window jolted me awake. I sat up, heart racing, telling myself I was just imagining things, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. The next day, I left the office earlier than usual, just wanting to get home and take a break. As soon as I walked into the house and shut the door, there was a knock. I hesitated for a few seconds before opening it, and there was a big box sitting on the ground. Right away, this strong, nasty smell hit me, making me want to puke before I even opened the box. My heart was pounding. I kinda knew what I was imagining, but my curiosity wouldn't let me stop. My hands were shaking as I peeled off the tape, and the second the lid popped open, I instinctively stepped back. Inside was a pile of red, slimy flesh wrapped in some cloth. Pale white patches of skin were mixed with this gross, sticky liquid. Flies buzzed around the edges, and tiny maggots crawled all over the surface. My stomach turned, and I bolted to the bathroom to throw up everything. It took me forever to calm down, but I went back to the box. I had to get rid of that disgusting thing immediately. But then I stopped. There was a small piece of paper on the box, covered in dried blood. Remember me? I didn't remember. My mind was a total mess, completely confused. But someone out there remembered me, clear as day. The cops showed up 10 minutes later. They checked the box, took meat samples for investigation, and searched around the house. 2 days later, the cops found out the meat in the box was bought from a local slaughterhouse. Looking at the cloth that wrapped the meat, it looked a lot like a jacket I used to have. My head was spinning, and I felt like I was losing it from this creepy prank. He had been so close to me. He snuck into my house, and there was a good chance he was still out there somewhere without me even knowing. "Have you had any recent disagreements?" a cop asked me. My mind was all over the place as I tried to dig through my memories. A few faces popped up. A former coworker who had acted out and was pretty hostile toward me before getting fired. Some weird guy I always saw at the coffee shop near my office. Every time I went, he'd be sitting in the corner like he was watching me. Who could be behind this messed up prank? The cops started investigating based on the list of suspects I gave them. They checked the security cameras near the coffee shop and saw that the weird guy had been there a bunch of times when I was there, but there was no proof he ever approached me. When they looked into him, he turned out to be just a regular delivery guy with no criminal record and no connection to what happened. Next up was my ex-coworker who got fired, Mark. After digging into his past, the cops found out he had a record for harassing women. During the interrogation, Mark didn't deny hating me after getting fired, but swore he never planned any revenge. The cops checked Mark's recent calls and activity, but found nothing linking him to what was happening to me. That made them start thinking maybe someone else was behind all this. Someone with deeper, more dangerous motives. A week later, I was living with constant anxiety. One afternoon, I got a package in the mail, a USB. I plugged it into my laptop, and there it was, a video of me sleeping, with the camera slowly getting closer and closer. The steady breathing of whoever was holding the camera started blending with the sound of my own breathing while I slept. With every passing second, my body froze up more and more. At the end of the video, the camera turned toward the window, showing the reflection of a tall, familiar figure dressed in black. I held my breath, my hands shaking as I slammed my laptop shut. But before I could even process what was happening, my phone started ringing. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a few seconds before picking up. "Hey honey, fun little joke, huh?" His voice was deep, filled with amusement. My hand clenched around the phone. I thought of him, but there was no way. He was still supposed to be in jail. "Dominic, how is this even possible? The law only traps the weak. I'm back, and I've got all the time in the world to play with you." Hearing that cold, twisted laugh made every scar on my body sting. All those memories of my personal hell came rushing back. My baby with him ripped away from me by violence just before his due date. I took a deep breath, forcing down the panic rising in my chest. I had to keep him talking long enough. I swallowed hard, my eyes flicking to the corner of my laptop screen, the location tracking system the cops installed 2 days ago. The GPS was updating every second. He was so close. My hand shook as I tapped the table, a signal to the tracking team. Dominic's creepy voice echoed in my ear. The back window. I've been in there so many times. You have no idea. My heart nearly stopped. I didn't dare turn around. I could feel his eyes on me from somewhere in the darkness. I took a deep breath. The SWAT team was in position. Dominic, this is the last time. Happy April. Fools, I whispered. A loud bang came from the other end of the line, followed by shouting, the sound of a door being kicked down, and Dominic's panicked screams when he realized he was trapped. I hung up. The location screen flashed one last time before the signal went dead. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This time, he wasn't coming back.
Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you turn to these videos as a gentle way to unwind and ease into sleep. So before you drift off tonight, could you help me with a small favor? Just leave a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. My goal is to hit around 200 likes within the first 24 hours. Simple actions like these help YouTube appreciate the content and spread the show to more people. Now then, let's dive into tonight's horror stories. I've moved twice since leaving Cassville, but I still feel uneasy every time I see a police patrol car. My name is Donnie, 38 years old. After my divorce last year, I decided to move back to my family's old house in rural Cassville, Ohio. I thought a quiet place would help me find my balance again after my broken marriage. The house had been empty for almost 10 years since my mother passed away, so it needed a lot of repairs. That was good. It gave me something to keep my mind busy. I started with simple things, painting the walls, replacing the pipes, fixing the roof. But the thing I wanted to do most was build a privacy fence along the edge of the backyard, which bordered a dense forest. After finishing the work inside the house, I started digging holes for the fence posts. The soil was quite soft here, and I figured it would take about 3 days to finish the fence. That afternoon, while digging near the left side of the house, my shovel hit something hard. At first I thought it was a rock, but when I cleared away the surrounding dirt, I saw a curved ivory-colored shape. It looked like a large piece of bone. I continued to dig and found more pieces. Probably deer bones, I thought, since there were a lot of wild animals in this area. But as I dug deeper, what appeared stunned me. It was a piece of a skull. I was sure of it because there were eye sockets. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone to call the police. I reported what I had found. The dispatcher said an officer would be there to check it out soon. About 20 minutes later, only one officer arrived. He introduced himself as Sheriff Dalton. I led him to the backyard and pointed to the hole. Dalton looked down, didn't seem to think it was a big deal, and nodded. Probably a cow or a hunting dog. I pointed to the skull piece. He leaned down for a closer look, then stood back up with an unchanged expression. Trust me, I've seen a lot of things like this. Dalton offered to help me clean up, but I refused. I said I could handle it myself. He looked at me for a long time, then nodded and left. I hammered the post into the ground as planned and didn't bother to dig up the bone pieces anymore. They were already there anyway, and moving them would just be a hassle. The next morning, I was making coffee in the kitchen when I heard a knock on the door. I was surprised to see Dalton standing on the porch. He was in plain clothes and holding 2 cups of coffee, smiling as if we were old friends. We sat on the front porch. Dalton talked about the weather and my house repairs. After a while of small talk, he asked, "Have you ever thought about selling the house?" The question was so unexpected that I stopped drinking my coffee. I just moved back here. I know, but this place is quite isolated. A single man like you might get lonely. Dalton paused and I said nothing, still surprised. I could buy this house with cash, no complicated paperwork. I refused without thinking. Dalton was silent for a long time, sipping his coffee and looking out at the forest behind the house. Okay, but just think about it. Maybe you'll change your mind. As Dalton left, I stood at the window watching his car drive away. When the car turned onto the main road, I noticed red mud stuck to the wheel wells. It was the same kind of mud from my backyard. A sense of unease crept in. I went to the backyard immediately to check. There were tire tracks in the dirt. They were definitely from a car. I stood there stunned for a while, filled with all kinds of suspicions and doubts. I spent the whole day thinking about the bones in the backyard and Sheriff Dalton's strange attitude. That night, I decided to call Jason, a college friend who was now a forensic technician in Columbus. I told him about what I had found. I just said I didn't trust the local police. Jason agreed to drive down on the weekend to check the bone samples. Jason arrived on Saturday morning. I led him to the backyard and pointed to the exact spot of the hole. The surface of the ground was perfectly flat. I was already a little bewildered at that point. We started digging. From the very first shovelful, I felt something was different. The dirt was much harder than I remembered, as if it had been compacted with a machine. It took us almost 2 hours to dig down to the same depth as before. But to our surprise, there was nothing there. Not a single piece of bone. I stood there, breathing heavily, with a shocked expression. Jason wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at me. Donnie, stress from a divorce can make people see things that aren't there. I didn't know what to say. The bones were gone, but I was sure they had been there. I clearly remembered the chilling feeling on my skin when I touched the skull. I decided not to look into it any further. There was no evidence to back up my story. No one but me and Sheriff Dalton had seen those bones, and based on his strange behavior, I was certain Dalton was involved. A month later, I put the house up for sale. I couldn't stay there anymore. Every night I felt like someone was watching me from the forest behind the house. An elderly couple from Cleveland bought the house. They were retired and wanted a quiet place to live. I felt guilty watching them excitedly talk about their plans to garden in the backyard, but I didn't say anything. I just wanted to get out of there. What would you do if you found out that the person who just saved your life was an accomplice to the person who tried to kill you? My story begins on a rainy night in Ohio, where I became an unintentional witness to a pre-planned robbery. I'm Aaron, 28 years old. That day I was driving to visit my parents. The familiar interstate became unfamiliar in the heavy rain. I decided to stop and rest for a bit. I remember it was after 10 p.m. I pulled into the parking lot of a Circle K convenience store near the highway exit. There was a truck and one other car in the lot. I ran inside the store. The cashier was a young man. He seemed surprised to see me. He kept staring at the door, his lips moving as if he was saying something. I nodded hello, and his smile was a bit forced. I thought it was strange, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I headed to the coffee machine. I filled a large cup with coffee and added cream and sugar. Suddenly, the cashier's voice blurted out, "Due to a technical issue, you have to leave now." I turned around, frowning. What kind of issue would he not announce when I walked in? I noticed his right hand was hidden under the counter. I was about to ask more questions when the door burst open. A tall man walked in. He wore a long black coat that covered most of his body and a ski mask that only showed his eyes. Rainwater dripped from his coat. He stood still for a second. Then he pulled a gun from his pocket and pointed it straight ahead. My heart felt like it stopped. The coffee cup fell from my hand. The robber quickly turned toward me. In just a few steps, he was on me. The cold gun barrel pressed against my temple. "Why are you here?" he hissed, looking very angry. At that moment, I thought this guy was an idiot for asking a customer why they were at a convenience store. But I couldn't argue with him. My legs felt like jelly, and I could barely stand. I put my hands up and kept begging him. "Don't do it." The cashier suddenly spoke up. I saw no signs of fear on his face. Instead, he was staring at the robber. The robber froze. His eyes glanced backward, probably thinking about something. I didn't dare to move even an inch. Then he swore, lowered his gun, and quickly walked out the door. I stood there like a statue until the sound of an engine starting up and fading away. I collapsed, having to hold on to a shelf to keep from falling. The cashier sighed, his face down to avoid my gaze. "Call the police." My voice was shaking. "No need," the employee said, sounding exhausted. I froze, and when I tried to convince him further, he suddenly yelled, "Just go. Now." He stared at me with wide eyes. Then the next second, his expression changed to one of worry, and he held his head in his hands. Surprised by his strange behavior, I quickly left without saying anything else. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. It took 3 tries to unlock my car. I drove out of the parking lot and stopped at a gas station half a mile away. Sitting in my car, I pulled out my phone and called 911, reporting the whole incident. The police arrived at the Circle K 15 minutes later with 2 patrol cars. I led them back to the scene and recounted the entire incident. The cashier was still there, his face pale when he saw the police. I was asked to leave after the police had gathered enough information and my statement. As I walked out of the store for the second time that night, I still couldn't stop shaking. The cold sensation of the gun barrel against my temple was still vivid. 3 days later, the case was solved. I saw the information in the local newspaper. The police had arrested the robber at a motel 50 miles away. His name was Matt, and he had just been released from prison after serving a 3-year sentence for theft. Another shocking piece of information: he was the cashier's biological brother. In a deeper investigation, the police discovered they had been exchanging messages beforehand. The cashier would work the night shift alone, turn off the security cameras under the pretense of regular maintenance, and Matt would come in, clear out the cash register, and disappear. The cashier would then report to the company that he had been robbed, and the insurance money would be split in half after Matt lay low for a few months. The article also mentioned a coincidental witness who made the plan go awry. That was me. Matt was sentenced to 5 years in prison for armed robbery and making a death threat. The cashier received 18 months for being an accomplice in insurance fraud. Matt could have shot me in those tense seconds. I'm still not sure why the cashier stopped his brother at that moment. Maybe things had gone further than he had imagined. But for whatever reason, his words, "Don't do it," kept me alive. Me. One August afternoon last year, all it took was a faint knocking sound from an abandoned house to shatter all my beliefs. The perpetrator of the most brutal crime was the person I trusted the most. I'm Elton, the police chief of Sedona, Arizona. For over 15 years of serving here, I've always been proud of this small community. Everyone knows and trusts each other, and the most serious crimes are just land disputes or assaults from drunken fights. That afternoon, I received a call from a family who had just moved into the neighborhood. The woman's voice was filled with anxiety, saying there were strange noises coming from the abandoned house behind their home. The sound was like someone knocking on a wall. I drove my patrol car there. The abandoned house had been there for a long time. The former owner had died many years ago. With no heirs, it was just left to rot. I parked my car and walked into the yard. The weeds were knee-high, and the air was heavy with the smell of mold. I listened, but there was no sound. Maybe the family was mistaken. But as I was about to leave, a faint knocking sound echoed from below. I quickly grabbed my flashlight and some lock-picking tools from the car. I walked inside and felt the wooden floor creak beneath my feet. Searching the first floor, I discovered a secret door under the stairs, locked with a padlock the size of my fist. The strange thing was that the lock was brand new. I used bolt cutters to break the lock. The door opened, revealing a steep wooden staircase leading into the darkness. A strong, foul odor hit me, and I had to cover my nose. Is anyone here? My voice echoed down and disappeared into the silence. But then I heard a noise. I slowly walked down. A small room with a low ceiling and no windows gradually appeared. I was shocked to see 3 figures huddled in the corner. A woman and 2 children. All 3 were thin, like skeletons wrapped in skin. The woman looked at me with a look of disbelief. Then she crawled to my feet, grabbed my pants, and sobbed. Please, please save us. I quickly sat down to comfort the woman. The 2 children, a boy and a girl, just looked at me with scared eyes. I immediately called for an ambulance. While waiting, I shined my flashlight around the room. The walls were covered with etchings. They had carved a line for each day that passed. There were also scrawled messages, pleas for help, and cries for rescue. A bucket in the corner served as a toilet. There were some old, rotting mattresses on the floor, a few cans of food and bottles of water. The medical team arrived and quickly took the woman and the 2 children away. I stayed at the scene with the investigation team. We found a notebook under a mattress. The yellowed pages documented the horror the victims had endured. The first page read, "My name is Leah Porter. Today is the first day I've been held here. If anyone finds this diary..." My mind immediately started racing when I read that line. Leah Porter was a girl who went missing 9 years ago when she was just 16. I had been part of that investigation. The case had been unsolved until today. I continued to read the following pages. She wrote about every day of her captivity, how she was kidnapped on her way home from school. She was locked in here and endured all kinds of physical and mental torture. The 2 children were the kidnappers. She tried to protect them, teaching them to read and write with charcoal on the walls. It was heartbreaking, and I admired Leah's resilience. While examining the scene, a sudden engine noise and a loud screech of tires drew everyone's attention. I looked and immediately recognized the car as belonging to Craig, my best friend. Craig got out of the car, his face as pale as if he had just seen a ghost. I was surprised and asked him what he was doing here, but Craig's eyes were fixed on the ambulance where Leah was being cared for. He stood there like a stone statue for a few seconds. I saw his hands trembling, and he swallowed hard. Then he suddenly turned and ran. I had a bad feeling and ran after him, calling his name. Craig heard me calling and ran faster. I lunged and tackled Craig right in front of his car. "Why are you here, Craig?" He didn't answer, just looked at me with the eyes of a person caught red-handed. When I tackled Craig, a key fell out of his pocket. I handed it to an officer, and the key could open the lock I had just broken. In that moment, my world came crashing down. This abandoned house was only 2 blocks away from Craig's house. The key to the cellar was too new for the age of the house. And most importantly, Craig was the only person I had ever told about Leah Porter's disappearance 9 years ago. He once asked me why the police couldn't find anything. Now I knew the reason. Craig knew because he was the one who hid her. I wanted to punch my best friend, whom I had trusted for 20 years, but I just stood there trembling, watching Craig get handcuffed. I realized how wrong I had been. I had trusted Craig, invited him to my house often, and let him be close to my daughter. I considered Craig my brother, while he was torturing a high school girl and 2 children just a few miles away. In the interrogation room, Craig admitted everything. He confessed to stalking Leah for months before kidnapping her, using the abandoned house as a place of confinement. DNA evidence confirmed he was the father of the 2 children. Leah's diaries, secretly taken photos, and personal belongings found in Craig's house solidified his guilt. With undeniable evidence, Craig was charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and rape. Sitting there, reading his statement, I felt suffocated. It took me a long time to sign the arrest warrant for my best friend. I sat in my office for a long time, feeling empty. I still couldn't believe what was happening. Craig is now awaiting trial. Leah and her 2 children are receiving medical and psychological care, slowly learning how to live again. As for me, I'm still the police chief of Sedona, but every night, as I patrol the quiet streets I once believed I knew so well, I wonder how many other secrets are hiding behind closed doors.
I grew up with a serious fear of water and a woman I can't really remember what her face looked like. My fear of water is tied to that woman. The only thing I remember about her is her long brown hair and her gentle voice. There was a time I pushed myself, determined to get over my fear by learning how to swim. But the image of that brown-haired woman kept popping up, throwing me off. Especially when I'd finished swimming and come up for air. The more I tried to catch my breath, the more I felt out of breath, losing my composure and getting all panicked and scared. There were a bunch of times I almost drowned and ended up in the ER. Eventually, my dad put a stop to it because my health and mental state were just getting worse. I lived with my dad in a pretty big house downtown. Like a lot of kids, I used to ask my dad about my mom all the time. My dad came up with all kinds of reasons to explain why my mom wasn't around. Later on, my dad would just give a little smile whenever I asked about it. I remember when I was little, I'd always cry loudly whenever my dad gave me a bath. I was really scared when I saw the bathtub full of water. When I got a bit older, my dad gave in and remodeled the bathroom, so we didn't have the bathtub anymore. It wasn't until I was 15 that I told my dad about my fear of water and the woman with the brown hair. I was worried he wouldn't believe me. My dad was so shocked that he almost crashed the car into a light pole. My dad kept asking me how I was feeling and immediately took me to the hospital to see a therapist.
Do you know anything about the brown-haired woman?
My question made my dad freeze, and he stared at me for a long time and then just smiled.
There are many brown-haired women, son.
I stayed quiet because there were things I just didn't know how to explain to my dad. What does Mom look like?
Your mom is really beautiful. She's the most beautiful woman in the world.
Is she coming back, Dad?
Dad didn't answer. He just looked at me, smiled, and seemed lost in thought.
Mom, doesn't she need us anymore?
Dad reacted right away to my question. Dad came over, hugged me, looked me in the eye, and made sure to stress each word.
Your mom loves you very much. Remember this.
I saw his nose and the corner of his eyes start to turn red. It was the first time I'd ever seen him cry.
Your mom has brown hair and eyes just like you. She passed away when you were very young.
I didn't expect to see my mom again since she was gone, but I wanted to find out everything I could. A lot of times when Dad wasn't around, I'd sneak into his room to look for photos or mementos of Mom. I found a medical record with the name Keva Martinez, my mom. I read through each medical exam result based on the dates on the record. My mom had severe depression. The follow-up exams and treatments didn't make her condition any better. I looked up everything I could find about my mom online, hoping there was more info out there besides these medical records. While searching through various websites for personal info, I also found out Keva Martinez, 27, drowned last night at the lake in town. They figured out it was because she climbed over a barbed wire fence to get away from the hospital. Keva's funeral is set for this afternoon. She wasn't guilty of attempted murder 3 months ago because of her depression. Her husband, Richard Martinez, tried to save their 3-month-old son, when he found Keva trying to drown him in the bathtub. After finding out everything, I locked myself in my room for 2 days. Dad was really worried about me. I asked my dad for some time to calm down, but didn't let him know that I knew everything. On the 3rd day, I came out of the room feeling a lot better. During dinner, I asked my dad,
Dad, do you love Mom?
Dad looked at me, a bit surprised, and said,
A lot. More than I love you.
Both of us smiled.
Is there anything you haven't done with Mom yet?
I regret not loving and caring for your mom more. Let her suffer through pregnancy and even during childbirth.
I smiled. That was the last time I asked about my mom. When I turned 18, I was free to live my own life, but I gave that freedom back to Dad. It was time for Dad to find someone new and seek out his own happiness. Then Aunt Lanny came along, and she was in the same situation as Dad. I saw Dad really happy and smiling a lot, just like he was when he found out I passed the entrance exam at a top university. Back when I was 9, like 20 years ago, I spent Christmas with my uncle's family out on his farm in Terlingua, Texas. I moved in with my grandma after my parents split up. Even though I didn't have a whole family, I still had plenty of love from other relatives like my uncle. My uncle's second son was 2 years younger than me, and we were pretty close. I was pretty much jumping for joy when my grandma said I could stay there for Christmas. After we finished the awesome turkey dinner my aunt made, my cousin and I hung up 2 stockings with our wishes and names stitched on them, right on the Christmas tree. "Can I stay up till Santa shows up to say thanks, Mom?" my cousin asked my aunt-in-law. "No, sweetie. A good kid who gets presents doesn't stay up late, right?" My aunt-in-law was always sweet about it. "What about you, Finn? What'd you write to Santa?" my aunt-in-law suddenly asked, kind of startling me. "It's a secret," I whispered. My aunt-in-law just smiled and led me and my brother back to our room. Honestly, I just stuffed a blank piece of paper in my sock. I wasn't young enough anymore to fall for those stories adults tell. But back then, I was really trying hard to believe Santa was real. That night, I couldn't sleep. Maybe I had too much hot chocolate, or maybe it was my cousin. Her snoring was absolutely awful. After lying there a while, I went to the bathroom, hoping I'd feel comfortable enough to sleep. When I got back from the bathroom and headed to the living room, I saw a dark shadow pass by the window, and I just froze for a few seconds. Is Santa really coming? What time is it? I was curious, so I went to open the window and stuck my head out. The cold wind hit me like a slap, waking me right up. I looked around the big yard to the left of the house, and there was nothing weird, just the sound of some families still partying. I couldn't take the cold anymore, so I shut the window, shivering and covered in goosebumps. Just as I was about to head back to my room, a loud noise startled me. "Beavis?" I figured my cousin was awake, but there was no answer. As I got closer to the bedroom, it was all quiet, and Beavis's snoring was still going strong. I quietly tiptoed the last few steps to the bedroom. The noise happened again, then a bunch more, so I stopped and looked at the window again. "Santa Claus?" I shouted when I saw red and white shadows zip by. I rushed over to the window to check if what I was thinking was real, and then I saw something that would haunt me for life. It was totally Santa Claus, wearing that classic bright red coat, but his white beard was splattered with red, and each drop was slowly dripping down. In his hand was a big shiny knife, and red drops were dripping from the blade, making stains on the white snow. There was another man, his face all messed up, covered in red, and he looked absolutely terrified. The man was kneeling in front of Santa, shaking with fear and pain. The man's hands were gripping his stomach so tight that they were covered in red, and every breath was coming out all labored and wheezy. Then he tried to get away, looking for a way out, but his movements slowly faded and eventually just stopped. Santa Claus, no, the killer, looked down at the man who was dying, and a creepy smile crept across his face. He reached out and brushed his cheek like it was some kind of final sick joke. Then he finished him off with a deadly stab. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I was gonna explode. My stomach was doing flips, and I was feeling super nauseous, but I just couldn't look away from what was happening. That Santa totally saw me when he walked away. I wanted to scream and run to find my uncle and aunt, but my legs felt frozen, like I couldn't move at all. Santa looked at me and slowly lifted his bloody finger to his lips, like telling me to be quiet. I was frozen in place for a sec. My whole body felt numb, not from the cold, but from the fear that just took over me. Santa just took off, and I was standing there, not even sure how long it took before I just crumpled to the floor. I crawled back to my room, pulled the blanket over me, and I was still shaking like crazy. I couldn't get a wink of sleep that night. The next day, when the whole fam got together to open up the gifts Santa supposedly brought, everyone was all hyped, especially my cousin. Me, I still couldn't shake off the nightmare from last night. "Plain, sweet," Beavis yelled, all pumped when he got his gift. "Come on, Finn, open your present," my aunt-in-law said with a smile. I knew this was the gift my uncle and aunt-in-law got for me, not Santa. "Santa was busy with other stuff last night," I mumbled. "Huh? What'd you say?" my aunt asked, but I dodged it real quick. "Go check if Santa's got anything else to say to you guys," my uncle said to me and Beavis. "Did Santa leave a message?" Beavis said, all surprised, and then started digging around in the stocking. "No way," he shouted when he spotted a red note. "May my handsome boy Beavis be a healthy kid." Handsome boy, that's the nickname only you use for me. "This is Santa's message just for you." My uncle shot Beavis a glare, looking all annoyed, then turned to me and said, "You gotta keep this to yourself." After lunch, I headed back to my room and pulled out the note from my pocket. "Keep it a secret." The letters were super bold, like a serious reminder. I crumpled up the note, squeezed it in my hand, and just started crying. The next day, I asked if I could go back to my grandma's, and that was the last time I saw my uncle and aunt-in-law. I totally dodged their questions. I just couldn't face them. I've never forgotten that. Like the fear and all made me totally hate Christmas and just want to hide away. This Christmas, I met Alita. She's the last missing piece that made my life feel complete. Alita said she hated Christmas too. Santa Claus killed my dad. I saw it all happen, but I couldn't do a thing. So, Alita and I just stuck together through that crazy night. But I know who did it, and Alita doesn't. Ken, my best friend from university, is a guy that everyone admires. He has a striking appearance, a well-proportioned body, neatly trimmed blonde hair, and captivating deep brown eyes. Ken always dresses neatly, with his shirts always perfectly pressed, a flawless, elegant appearance of a young man from a wealthy family. It's not hard to spot Ken in the crowd, as he has a bright, promising presence that makes it impossible for others not to notice him. With outstanding academic achievements since he was young, Ken is someone everyone believes will have a brilliant future. But there is one thing about Ken that many people can't quite understand. He's very quiet and a little shy. Ken doesn't like large gatherings and never casually chats with his classmates. He often sits alone, quietly observing others as if he is lost in a different world. Ken and I have known each other since the first day of university, when we were both assigned to the same group. At first, Ken was very distant, but over time, we became closer. I tried to open up and bring him into my world. Although Ken gradually became more comfortable, he still maintained his calm, quiet demeanor. In the third year of university, Ken began to show some strange behavior. At first, Ken's usual neatness gradually disappeared. His hair was no longer as tidy as before, messy, as if it hadn't been trimmed in days. The perfectly pressed shirts were now wrinkled, with intentional stains, in the form of drawings and crude phrases. Ken became disheveled, absent-minded, and exhausted, his appearance unrecognizable as the bright young man everyone once knew. The change didn't stop at his appearance. Ken became increasingly obsessed with the attention of others. Ken started to act differently, trying to be close and friendly with everyone, something he had never done before. Ken took the initiative to join conversations, trying to blend in with other group gatherings. He smiled more often, but the smile didn't carry true happiness. It was like an effort, a forced attempt to make himself accepted. This forced friendliness didn't last long and quickly turned into even strange behavior. Ken wanted to attract more attention from the crowd in a stronger way. I remember the first time when he suddenly stood up in the middle of class while the teacher was lecturing and began speaking loudly about a great plan of his. He said that he would become the inventor of time-traveling machines and make humans immortal. The whole class laughed, amused by Ken's unusual behavior, while the teacher frowned and reminded him. Not stopping there, Ken gradually began to do even more bizarre actions in every situation with the crowd. He would suddenly stand on a chair in the middle of the school cafeteria, shouting loudly about his absurd plans. A few times, he shouted incomprehensible slogans while everyone was quietly studying. I could see the desperation in Ken's eyes as he tried to attract attention, a longing that bordered on obsession. He wanted everyone to look at him, to be the center of attention, even if it meant Ken had to become strange, even bizarre. Ken's change left me confused and questioning. When I first noticed the change in his appearance, I wondered if it was due to academic pressure or some difficulties he wasn't talking about. But as time went on, this change made me feel more and more worried and uncertain about Ken's true personality. I tried to get closer to Ken, to understand him better, but I knew Ken wanted more than that. A seed of horror was cultivated by Ken in his own soul since he was a child. Ken's strange behavior was the final threshold before the tree of that seed from the past bore fruit. It was an evening that seemed ordinary. I sat in my dorm room, books spread out in front of me, but my mind was drifting somewhere else, trying to focus, but failing. At that moment, my phone rang. A message came from a mutual friend of mine in Ken. Just a few short lines, but enough to leave me stunned. Ken went to the police station and confessed. He killed his mother. My hands trembled. My eyes couldn't leave the phone screen, and the words seemed to dance before my eyes. I read the message once, then again, but I couldn't believe what I was reading. My mind went blank. Time seemed to stop, and all that was left was panic. My heart began to race, and my body went stiff. A cold sensation spread from my chest, as if an ice block was pressing heavily on my heart. Ken, my best friend, is a murderer? No, this can't be true. Ken went to the police station, standing in front of the officers, dressed in a neat outfit, a spotless white shirt, black trousers, and shiny leather shoes.
Ken's hair was carefully combed, and his face showed no emotion, as if everything that had happened was of no importance. He spoke loudly and confidently, outlining his plan and the crime he had committed. The police began their investigation and slowly uncovered the tragic yet condemnable story of Ken's mother. They discovered that Ken had lived under the twisted and cruel upbringing of his mother. Ken was expected to become a perfect gem, flawless and without a single blemish, by his ambitious mother. But she didn't use a scientific approach to parenting, combined with the love of her mother to raise Ken. All the frustrations and resentment from the darker side of a seemingly perfect family, she poured them onto Ken. His impressive appearance and outstanding academic achievements were the mask she created to cover up her own cruelty. Every action, every thought, every moment of Ken's life had to be under his mother's surveillance. He lived with his physical functions, but his emotions were controlled and permitted by his mother. The price for that perfection was that Ken's childhood and soul were distorted, forced into a mold with no way out. Ken endured that torment in silence, never daring to speak out. He just wanted freedom, to escape the controlled life, and chose to end it all. The utter helplessness and despair were expressed through the 13 knife wounds Ken left on his mother's body. When I learned about Ken's past, I felt an endless sorrow, a deep regret for my friend. I can't forget the look in Ken's eyes as he was led away by the police. Empty, soulless eyes, but with something that seemed like a sense of relief. It was as if he had finally escaped that nightmare, even though the price he had to pay was too great.
The pressure from an environment lacking love and understanding can cause deep wounds, leading a person to lose themselves, and sometimes the only form of release comes from the most brutal actions.
I'm Thomas. I usually walk home after work to get some fresh air and unwind. One afternoon I saw this pretty good-looking guy walking through the park. His long old coat, the same color as his baseball cap, made it look like he was wearing a ton of layers, making him look kind of bulky. His scruffy beard on his sharp face with big, bulging eyes. I was drawn to him by this weird, quirky look. The man had a camera with a super long lens in his hand. I know a bit about cameras, and I'm guessing that lens is worth a lot. The guy walked over to chat with a pretty girl sitting on a stone bench, and I figured he'd asked to take her picture. The girl shook her head right away and gave a shy smile. But after a few lines, he totally convinced her. In the photo shoot, the girl didn't know how to pose and looked pretty awkward. After the guy gave her some tips, they snapped the second photo. As soon as the lens flashed, there was this loud bang. The girl's head just exploded. She froze for a few seconds and then slowly dropped. I was totally shocked. My nerves were shot and my whole body just went numb. I face planted on the stone bench. Blood was pouring out of my nose and everything went all fuzzy. After a bit, I pulled out my phone, squinting like crazy to call 911. Looking back, the guy had just vanished. A bunch of people started to notice, showing up with a mix of fear and curiosity. I felt like my body was being lifted, and everything started to blur. When I woke up, the doctor told me I had a nose injury from the fall, and that I had to stay in the hospital for a few days. I worked with the police and told them the whole story, especially about that weird guy, in detail. The police kept digging into the case, and I was pretty traumatized. I couldn't shake the image of that pretty girl who turned into a corpse with her head all messed up after the click. I couldn't sleep at all for 3 days in the hospital. On the 4th day, when I was getting out, the cops called me with the results of the investigation. The poor girl got hit by a stray bullet from some criminal who was half a mile away, running off. It must have been a total coincidence. That guy was actually a photographer just passing through. Everything went back to normal, and I didn't see that guy in the park again until a few weeks later. As I was passing by a restaurant at the intersection, I spotted him inside, still in the same clothes and holding a camera. The guy was chatting with an old couple. The couple nodded happily and quickly got up to pose all close together. Suddenly, my heart was racing with worry and nerves. The flash went off, and nothing weird happened next. The old couple went to check out the photo they just took, and were super happy with it. They thanked him and went back to their table to keep eating. Out of nowhere, a truck lost control and came barreling right at the restaurant. You could hear the brakes screeching, a big crash, and panicked screams, all these crazy, terrifying sounds, one after another. The old couple was lying under the bloody wheels, and their bodies were totally messed up. Seeing that horrifying scene again, it felt like my legs were stuck to the ground. The photographer just strolled out of the chaos. He looked up, took a deep breath, and had this satisfied, proud grin, like he'd just won a big tournament. Then he happened to see me, and his eyes lit up with interest. I turned around and bolted, stumbling like I was about to wipe out. Once I got home, I couldn't focus on anything. I didn't snap back to reality until my wife patted me on the shoulder. "Are you okay, Thomas?" my wife asked, looking worried. Just a bit, but I'm good." "Hi, Dad. Today a guy said he wanted to take my picture by the school gate." What my 5-year-old daughter said totally set off alarm bells in my head, lighting up all my nerve cells. "What did you say?" "He took my picture, Dad. But he said he'd show me the picture the next time we met." I couldn't stay calm and ran over to kneel in front of her. "No, sweetie. If you see that guy again, just run far away, okay?" I said, stressing every word. "What's going on? Do you know that guy?" my wife asked, looking confused. My daughter looked at me all innocent and said, "He said he wouldn't see me again and showed me the photo, but told me to tell you to meet him this weekend." Oh God, that crazy guy knows my family way too well. When did he start stalking us? My daughter and I were in his sights, and my wife was 5 months pregnant. What can I do to keep my family safe?
Gray is a cool, classy man who's got it all together. He's crashing at some fancy hotel with his hot young girlfriend. They've been a thing for like 2 years now. "I'm so over this, Gray. I want a wedding everyone's gonna be jealous of," Gray's girlfriend whines. "I've still got a ton of legal stuff to deal with my wife. Plus, I want to be there for my 2 boys," Gray says. The girlfriend's always bugging Gray for being his official wife. Gray's always acting like he's this big family guy, but he's constantly coming up with excuses to keep his girl happy on the side. "That's it." The girlfriend grabs her phone, ready to call Gray's wife and stir things up. The two get into it, and things totally blow up. "We're done," Gray says, all cold and serious. He opens the door and walks out, looking totally white. Gray grabs a cab to head home. He's trying to figure out what to tell his wife about getting home so late. When Gray looks back, the familiar city street turns into some random, empty road by the edge of the woods. "You sure this road goes to the place I'm trying to get to?" Gray asks, all worried. "Chill out. This is a shortcut." the driver says, sounding pretty cold. Gray notices the driver keeps staring at him in the rearview mirror. His rough face and beard totally freak Gray out. 5 minutes later, the car is totally silent, and it's giving him the creeps. From the driver's cold stare to the empty road getting even quieter, Gray starts feeling more and more uneasy. Why'd he pick this road? A thought pops up, and then he feels a wave of anxiety. The driver suddenly slams on the brakes, gets out to make a call, and Gray's just sitting there all confused. Gray rolls down the window to listen in. "The stuff's here. When are you gonna be here? I don't have all day," the driver says, kinda annoyed. Gray's sitting in the car, trying to make sense of everything, but he's freaking out. What the heck is he even talking about? How he talks about goods makes Gray realize he may be in serious trouble. Am I the goods? The question keeps popping up in his head, freaking him out. He's about to dip, but then he realizes the car door's locked, which makes Gray even more sure he's right. Gray's heart's racing, panic's creeping in, but at the same time, his survival instinct kicks in big time. Out of nowhere, Gray spots this small, pale yellow thing on the car floor. It is the driver's license. He looks at the photo in the car, and it definitely doesn't look like the driver. Right then, Gray's 100% sure he's the thing the driver was talking about. "I gotta figure out how to get out of here," Gray mutters, and right then, the driver comes back to the car. Gray's freaking out, torn between wanting to escape this mess no matter what, and being scared of what he might have to do next. The second the driver gets in, Gray grabs the pen from his shirt and starts jabbing him in the neck. Once he's sure the driver's out cold, Gray grins like a maniac, showing off his red teeth. "This feels awesome." The rush of taking the driver out totally takes over. Gray isn't the classy, successful guy he used to be anymore. After struggling for a bit to drag the driver's body to the back seat, Gray's about to drive off when a car comes flying at him from the other way. Two guys, all dusty and rough-looking, step out of the car. "Come on, bring this stuff over here," one of them yells. Gray figures this is the driver's deal. After a few seconds of thinking it over, Gray just goes for it and plays the driver. "In the trunk, hurry up." A guy quickly walks up, pops open the trunk, and inside is the body of a moose, a pretty rare animal. Gray gets it now. He looks at the two guys with a blank stare, slowly pulling out that pen from earlier. While the other guy's checking out the surroundings, he spots a dark shadow inside the car. "How the hell would a fourth person know about this?" he grumbles, walking over to open the door. The empty road by the forest suddenly fills with loud, scary screams. About 20 minutes later, Gray drives off in the two guys' car, leaving the taxi with 3 bodies crammed inside. It's almost 3 a.m., and Gray's speeding down the street like it's no big deal. He's in a daze, heart racing, foot slammed on the gas, just laughing like a maniac, all pumped up. After 2 days on the run, Gray gets busted by the police while he's just stopping at a convenience store to grab something. "You're under arrest for murder, Mr. Taylor." But the victim the police are talking about isn't the 3 guys dealing in rare animals. It is Gray's girlfriend. So that night, Gray ended up taking 4 lives. When they arrest him, facing the cops, Gray doesn't feel scared like he did before. Instead, a little grin shows up on his face, like he's loving the end of a game he totally nailed. From being scared and freaked out, he slowly starts feeling good, like a rush, enjoying making someone stop breathing. He doesn't care about regret or what happens next. To him, it is all just a game, and he is the one calling the shots. The crazy villain gets slapped with a life sentence and no chance of parole.
What once seemed like a perfect decision turned into the worst nightmare. The house by the lake was our dream, but now, every night, I hear Devlin's voice calling from the cold water. I'm Oscar, 37 years old. My wife is Xavier, who was my junior in college. We have a 6-year-old son named Devlin. My wife and I are in the real estate business. Specifically, we buy old houses for cheap, then renovate them and resell them for a profit. The business provides my wife and me with a stable income. 2 months ago, we bought a very spacious house on the edge of town that even had a swimming pool in the front yard. What made it even better was the low price, and my wife and I were thrilled we had found such a great deal. After inspecting the house and estimating the cost and time for repairs, I suggested to my wife that we should move here. Once renovated, the house would be an ideal place to live. Devlin also needed a stable and spacious environment to grow up in. Xavier was completely convinced and agreed. After the renovations were completed, my family moved into the new house. Unlike my wife's and my excitement, Devlin seemed shy and uncomfortable with the new house. Xavier and I thought he just needed time to get used to the new place. Devlin's room and our room were on the second floor, separated by a staircase leading down to the living room. We prioritized cleaning and decorating Devlin's room first to make him feel as comfortable as possible. On the first night in the new house, Devlin said he was scared and wanted his parents to stay until he fell asleep. Our family of 3 lay on Devlin's small bed and read a fairy tale book. A while later, seeing that Devlin was fast asleep, we went back to our room. In the middle of the night, our son's screams woke us up. My wife quickly ran to Devlin's room and hugged him tightly to reassure him. I waited for him to calm down and asked him what was wrong. Devlin said a monster with big feet had been standing and looking at him. We realized Devlin had a nightmare. Xavier told me to go back to our bedroom and that she would stay with him. Devlin's mood got worse over the next few days. He was always scared and said he kept hearing a voice whispering in his ear. We were quite worried about our son's health, so we hired a psychologist to come to the house. We waited in the living room while Devlin talked to the doctor upstairs in his room. About an hour later, the psychologist came downstairs and said Devlin had an anxiety disorder. She told us we needed to pay more attention to him and talk to him more. But contrary to what the psychologist said, Devlin's behavior became increasingly abnormal. At times, he was timid and shy, and at other times, he was aggressive and easily angered. One morning, while I was with some construction workers retiling the living room floor, I was startled by Xavier's yelling from outside in the yard. When I ran out, I saw Xavier and Devlin getting out of the car. Xavier was very upset, uttering words of blame, while Devlin looked sad with his head down. I was confused and asked what had happened to them. Xavier said Devlin had been suspended from school for a few days due to his rebellious behavior and for hitting his classmates. I told Xavier to calm down and to leave us alone so I could talk to our son. She angrily said she would invite the same psychologist back to talk to our son again. She's dead. Devlin's words froze my wife and me in place. I knelt down, looked Devlin straight in the eyes, and gently asked him where he got that information. Devlin said the mysterious voice told him that. Xavier quickly called the female doctor, but the person who answered the phone was her mother. She told us that her daughter had been in a car accident for reasons that were unclear. The day of the accident was the day after she spoke with Devlin. We were incredibly confused about everything and decided we had to pay more attention to Devlin. On the days he was not in school, Devlin just stayed in his room and painted. My wife and I spent time talking and listening to Devlin to understand his state of mind. I also reduced my work hours to take our son out to play. The most important thing to us now was our son. Xavier and I didn't want to make any mistakes in raising Devlin, and we didn't want to miss any of his developmental milestones. One night, I woke up to a very loud noise from the swimming pool. I quickly went to check, with Xavier anxiously following behind. When we got there, I was stunned to see Devlin's small body floating on the surface of the pool. Xavier screamed as soon as she saw the heartbreaking scene. Everything seemed to collapse. We couldn't believe we had lost Devlin forever. The incident happened so quickly that Xavier couldn't recover. She blamed me for not prioritizing installing a protective fence around the pool. I also reached my breaking point and said some harsh things to my wife. Xavier immediately packed her things and left. I didn't hold on to her or even look after her for a second. I stayed in this house full of grief alone, and I chose to work to temporarily forget everything. I sleep in Devlin's room because I miss my son so much. Many nights I hear Devlin's screams for help. I wake up, hug my son's small pillow, and cry. I blame myself for indirectly causing Devlin's death. Sometimes, in our busy lives, we forget that the most important things are right in front of us. A child needs to be cared for, not only with material things, but also with our time, our listening, and especially their safety. Protective measures may seem as simple as a pool fence, but the smallest oversight can lead to a lifetime of regret. Take the time to truly be with your children, listen to their fears, and never compromise a child's safety for any reason.
I work as an assistant for a company that provides women. My name is Kaylee. I'm 26 years old. I'm an executive assistant, so I handle scheduling meetings, organizing conferences, preparing documents, and a bunch of other stuff. I'm confident that I look great, can pick up information quickly, and handle work really well. But I haven't been very lucky when it comes to picking the right place to work. I was getting ready for an interview with my fourth company. It was a pretty well-known securities company in the city. After 3 days of interviews, they let me know I'd got the job. My boss was a young guy named Anthony, just 4 years older than me. On my first day, I got into the swing of things pretty quickly, even though there were a lot of tasks to handle. But I managed it, and everything went smoothly. Anthony, the boss, was amiable and nice too. He was the type who would chat and ask a bunch of questions whenever he had some free time. While I was going through the director's files, I accidentally came across the records of the former secretaries. They were all really beautiful, and some had impressive education. I felt like I only matched up to a few of their talents, but they probably didn't find the right fit in the work environment like I did in my previous jobs. One day, after wrapping up an important meeting at the company, Boss Anthony told me about a meeting with a partner that night. Mr. Otis was a longtime partner and a close friend of my boss. This meeting was going to be a bit different since I didn't need to set up a venue or a banquet table. It was going to be held at Mr. Otis's villa. Boss Anthony asked me to dress up nicely in a red dress and said my job would be to take notes on the important stuff during the meeting. The appointment was at 7 p.m., right after work, so I quickly swung by a fashion store and picked out a gorgeous dress. In the evening, I took a taxi to Mr. Otis's villa and waited there for Boss Anthony. At the scheduled time, Boss Anthony called to let me know he'd be a bit late because of an urgent issue. Anthony told me to go inside and meet Mr. Otis first. I didn't ask any questions, just tidied up a bit and then went to ring the bell. When the door opened, the inside of the villa was like a palace with so much gold. It totally dazzled me. An extremely elegant and handsome man came over to me. "Hi, I'm Otis. Nice to meet you." His voice was really charming too. I still had to stay as professional as possible, so I greeted him politely, and then Otis showed me inside. I was really impressed by this guy. He seemed perfect, from his looks to his career. I checked out the living room while Otis, being pretty far away in the kitchen, poured some wine. It looked like he didn't have a butler or a maid. Suddenly, I spotted a drop of red liquid on the floor. Scenes in horror movies immediately popped into my head. I noticed Otis was still in the kitchen, so I sat down, wiped my hand on the liquid, and sniffed it. It smelled fishy, so it was definitely blood. My thoughts were immediately interrupted when I saw a long line of blood running down my calf. I was on my period, so it was super embarrassing and silly. As soon as Otis came back, I quickly asked if I could use the restroom. Luckily, the red dress saved me this time. After dealing with the situation, I went back to the living room and had a really pleasant chat with Otis. I almost forgot what I was supposed to do in the meeting tonight. When I remembered my boss Anthony, I asked Otis if I could step out for a minute to make a phone call. After making nearly 10 calls without getting through, I started to worry, but had to head back inside. I was pretty surprised to see that Otis had set up a small banquet table. He invited me to sit down and start eating. I asked Otis what the meeting was about and let him know that I couldn't reach my boss Anthony, but Otis didn't seem surprised or worried at all. With Otis's knack for persuasion, I quickly forgot about work. Otis invited me to have some pricey Romanée Conti wine. Just as I was about to take a sip, I heard a girl scream loudly, and then the sound of a gun going off twice. I was shocked and confused, and Otis was too, but then he started to panic. The screams and curses aimed at Otis just kept going. The gunshots kept firing, and one by one, the pricey stuff in the living room was getting wrecked. From upstairs, a girl came down looking disheveled in a nightgown. She was covered in bruises, and some spots were scratched and infected. She held the gun tightly in her hand, pointed it right at me and Otis, and screamed, crying and in pain, "Let her and all of us go, you jerk!" I took a closer look at the girl and gasped in shock. "Julia! Wasn't she one of the secretaries who used to work at my company?" Julia looked at me with a hint of surprise. A tall guy in a black suit walked up behind Julia. It was like she sensed him coming. Julia spun around and aimed the gun straight at the guy in black, warning him to back off. For a moment, Julia had him under control. She frowned angrily, aimed the gun right at me and Otis, and then pulled the trigger. The sound of the gun was so loud, it felt like it was going to burst my eardrums. I screamed, grabbed my head, and dropped to the floor. I heard the sound of glass breaking and looked over at the Romanée Conti bottle. The white pills that hadn't completely dissolved yet mixed with the wine and scattered all over the dining room. I glanced at Otis in panic, and his expression was no longer calm and polite. Otis yelled and cursed at Julia while telling his guys to quickly arrest her. I quickly pulled out my phone to call the police, but the call wouldn't go through. Otis hit my hand hard, and my phone flew across the room. The gun in Julia's hand went off with loud bangs, and I screamed in panic. I opened my eyes and looked around. Otis and his guys were momentarily under Julia's control. I crawled over to the phone to call the police, but I wasn't sure if they'd hear me because the gunfire was so loud. Julia grabbed my hand, dragged me into a room, and locked the door behind us. There were 3 other girls inside, and I quickly recognized them as Mia, Rose, and Gail. They were also the secretaries I'd seen in the file. What was even more shocking was that Gail was heavily pregnant, and she had a lot of wounds and scars on her body. The door was being pounded hard, and Otis's angry voice was shouting threats, his teeth clenched. We hugged each other tightly, shaking and crying. Finally, the police arrived, and the other girls and I were rescued. The 4 girls were rushed to the hospital right away because we were in pretty bad shape. I worked with the police to give my statement. The situation was finally sorted out. Anthony teamed up with Otis to help the company grow, as long as he got high-quality products in return. Gail, Mia, Julia, and Rose were brought to this villa one by one to be entertainment for Otis. I was luckier than they were since I was found and rescued in time. Otis was arrested and put in jail. Gail gave birth to a healthy baby boy at the hospital and named him Jason. Gail would use Otis's fortune to raise the child. We became close like sisters, set up charity houses, and raised funds to support single mothers. But so far, the police haven't been able to catch Anthony. We're still working with the police and hoping to find out where he is soon.